Shall I,
Yep.
stand here? Good evening, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to St. George's Talks. Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren, und willkommen in St. Georg's Vorträge, a monthly series of illustrated lectures given in an ancient German Lutheran chapel, grade 2 star listed. Grade 2 star is superior to grade 2. Humdrum buildings are grade 2. This one is very special. Hardly changed since 1762 when it was built by a community of German migrant workers here. My name is Rick Jones. I'm the committee chair that looks after events that happen in this building, which include the monthly talks and a monthly organ vespers, first Saturday every month, when the evocative wheezy organ is played by visiting players. Many come from abroad, and the organ actually is unique in this building. It's a Volker instrument built in Germany and then transported across in the 1880s. Money for it was partly provided by the King of Prussia, Wilhelm Friedrich IV, I think. £50 he gave back in the 1850s, which contributed to the building of the organ. For my sins, I'm the committee chair. The sins are listed on the board behind me here, the 10 Commandments. I've got many more than that, but all the memorials, or not all of them actually, but most of them are in German. Many of the early congregation buried in the church here. It's a place of great memories as well. Of those 10 Commandments, number 3 concerns the Sabbath day. It reminds us that du sollst kein Werk tun on the Sabbath day. Noch dein Sohn, noch deine Tochter, noch dein Knecht, noch deine Magd, noch dein Vieh, noch den Fremdlinge, der in deinen Toren ist. I'll give you that in English. On the Sabbath day, thou shalt do no work, neither your son nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your cattle, nor the stranger that is within thy gates. Everyone is included except the wife. She's not there. Noch deine Frau, she's not there on the list. Even she's got to do the cooking on the Sabbath day. Even the cattle get the day off, and the stranger, but not mum. It's number 4, actually, in the English version, 3 in the German. So there's a discrepancy between the Lutheran and the Anglican Church in the numbering of the 10 Commandments. Now, our speaker this evening has no sins. He's a great traveller, lecturer, and teacher. His knowledge of German culture, history, customs is encyclopedic. He has travelled throughout Germany, both presently in an air-conditioned motor coach with groups of visitors, but also in the past on a bicycle with groups of schoolboys in his wake. Or maybe he was in the wake of them, I don't know. I was never one of them, although I am one of our speaker's former pupils. Und alles, was ich jetzt auf Deutsch kann, habe ich von unserem Sprecher gelernt. Everything that I can do in German, I learned from our speaker. Many of the audience here in the church are also former pupils, and maybe those online as well. It's lovely to see so many people here this evening, both in the flesh and online. So, will you welcome now, please, our speaker this evening, Mr. Frank Pattison.
Now, Imo, I haven't got the screen I want, I'm afraid.
Behind, it's on the.
It's not here, Rick, which is to the. That's always the most difficult, most challenging bit of these talks. Rick, thank you for your kind words. Thank you also for the invitation. I've lost count. This is the fifth or sixth time that I've had the privilege of addressing audiences in this beautiful. I'd like to give a particularly warm welcome to two groups before I start. As Rick's mentioned, one or two of my former pupils are here from Christ Hospital and from in Horsham and from Whitgift in Croydon, where I taught Rick. And indeed, I took Rick on his first German exchange 51 years ago. So welcome to you, gentlemen. It's a little bit like, as I look at you, it's a little bit like being back in the classroom, although possibly your hair is a little bit grayer and a little bit thinner than it was in those days. And a particularly warm welcome to three of my traveling companions who came to the Harz with me just a few months ago. Let's begin. Let's first of all establish where the Harz is. It's in northern Germany. The nearest major cities, I need to adjust something, excuse me. Beg your pardon. Yeah, that's better. The nearest major cities are Hanover and Magdeburg. Politically, the Harz crosses the borders of the states of Lower Saxony in the old West Germany and Saxony-Anhalt and Thuringia in the former East. And there you see the border. This stone marks where the three states meet. So technically, this was the Iron Curtain. The physical border, to which we'll return later, was just a few yards away. The Harz is a region of dramatic scenery, wooded hills, steep rocky gorges, fast-flowing rivers, and lakes. The national park is 68 miles long and 35 miles wide. Tourism is a major industry, but for centuries, the economic life of the region depended on mining. The rich deposits of silver, iron, lead, and other metals brought great prosperity to the area. Almost half of Germany's silver was mined in the Harz. Our journey will begin in Goslar and end on the Brocken, the highest mountain in the Harz. Between them, we'll visit Bad Harzburg, Osterode, Nordhausen, Halberstadt, Quedlinburg, Wernigerthaler, and Wernigerode. Just need to make another small adjustment. Yeah, okay. The national park, 68 miles long and 35 miles wide. So I've said that already. Here we go. The route of tonight's journey goes back to my two excursions to the top of the Brocken. With a school cycling trip in 1997, and a more leisurely trip with friends last year. I'm delighted that the three friends to the right of this picture, Hilda and James and Lawrence, are here this evening. In the picture, we're sitting under the umbrellas of the cafe of Hanover Town Hall, which you can see down on the terrace. We had flown to Hanover and then took the train to Goslar, the gateway to the Harz, situated in the former West Germany. A sign welcomed us to the old imperial town. Goslar is the most important town in the northern Harz and home to 3 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The town is famous as both a major mining centre and as a residence of the Holy Roman Emperors. All was mined in the northern Harz from Roman times, and Goslar developed from the 10th century as a settlement to guard the mines. A glockenspiel in the main square recalls the importance of mining in Goslar's history. The Holy Roman Empire had no fixed capital, and parliaments or imperial diets were held wherever the emperor and his court were residing. Goslar, with its lucrative silver mining, was a particular favourite. And for some 250 years, Goslar, which you see here, held a privileged position in this vast empire. Its coat of arms incorporated the imperial eagle. The scale of the imperial palace, the Kaiserpfalz, which was built in the 11th century and was at the time the largest secular building north of the Alps, is an indication of Goslar's status in the empire. Royalty and the Pope were received here, and the Emperor Heinrich IV was born in Goslar. The former Guildhall, later hotel, proudly displays statues of the Holy Roman Emperors from its time as an imperial residence. The emperors withdrew from Goslar in the 13th century after 250 years of imperial rule, and the town council and merchants acquired a more dominant role, with mining remaining the principal industry. With its palace and 47 churches and monasteries, medieval Goslar was known as the Rome of the North. The town hall was a symbol of Goslar's pride and prosperity. The figure 1100 in one of the arches commemorates the town's 1100th anniversary just 3 years ago. It was built in the 15th and 16th centuries when the silver mining was at its peak. In the richly decorated councillors' meeting room, every painting on the walls and ceiling is a work of art in its own right, an indication of Goslar's wealth. However, the prosperity wouldn't last. The Dukes of Brunswick seized the lucrative mining rights, and the town suffered a steady decline, worsened by devastating fires and mismanagement. During the 19th century, it was absorbed into the Kingdom of Prussia. There it is, and was no more than a sleepy provincial town where people went in retirement to escape from the new industrial cities. Once a proud imperial town and the Rome of the North, it was now marketed as Pensionopolis. The 11th century cathedral, where an emperor had received a pope, was sold off to a local tradesman and demolished for use as building material. Only the porch remained standing. The 13th century plinth of the imperial throne was rescued before the demolition and is displayed within the porch, together with a copy of the 11th century bronze throne. The bronze original, now displayed in the vaults of the palace, is the oldest surviving medieval throne of a Holy Roman Emperor, apart from Charlemagne's throne in Aachen. It's 250 years older than the coronation chair in Westminster Abbey, which was made of wood because bronze was deemed too expensive. As Goslar declined, the great imperial palace itself, which had been used as a granary and a warehouse, was a dilapidated ruin. It wasn't until the end of the 19th century and the founding of the German Empire in 1871 that Germany began to rediscover and glorify its imperial past, and the palace, long neglected, was restored as a national monument. Outside, we see statues of the Emperor Barbarossa on the right and Wilhelm I, the first emperor of the new German Empire. Inside the palace, we find a series of marvelous allegorical paintings which glorify the new German Empire. The main picture shows Wilhelm I on horseback with his son, the future Kaiser Friedrich III. In the skies above Wilhelm, his mother, Queen Louisa, and the great emperors of German history honor him. On the far left, the German princes pay homage, and King Ludwig of Bavaria offers Wilhelm the imperial crown. To the left, in the white uniform, stands Bismarck, and to the right, Alsace and Lorraine offer Wilhelm their lands. The boy behind the column to the right is the young Prince Wilhelm, who would become Germany's last Kaiser. Below the emperors are figures representing Father Rhine and German history, of which Wilhelm was seen as the fulfillment. And this was how the new Germany, victor over Denmark, Austria-Hungary, and France, regarded itself at the end of the 19th century. Moving on, during the Nazi period, the imperial palace retained its historic significance. Here, Hitler and Rommel inspect a guard of honor. In April 1945, Goslar surrendered to the US Army, which prevented the destruction which we will see elsewhere. Today, with its narrow cobbled streets and some 1,800 fine half-timbered houses, it gives you the feeling that you're stepping back centuries. Unsurprisingly, the old town of Goslar is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We were more than happy with our hotel, Zur Börse, which dates back to the 16th century and is one of many magnificent half-timbered buildings. Opposite our hotel, for example, was the ancestral home of the Siemens dynasty. Here, Lawrence and I are unusually leaving rather than entering the old brewery. Perhaps we were on our way to the next pub. This is the Butterhanne, named after a milkmaid called Hannah, who made the local cheese. A hard and fairly pungent cheese known as Harzer Käse. The story goes that its strong taste came from the milkmaid's habit of scratching herself indelicately as she churned the milk, as shown here. Whether or not there's any truth in the story, Hannah is now the unofficial symbol of Goslar. On the edge of Goslar is the Rammelsberg mining complex, another UNESCO World Heritage Site, where copper, silver, and lead were mined for at least 1,000 years. The mine closed only at the end of the last century, and the site became an industrial museum. An electric train took us deep into the heart of the disused mine. For centuries, the tunnels were carved out of the rock with the simplest tools, hammer and chisel. Rammelsberg shares its UNESCO award with a vast network of ponds and reservoirs covering 77 square miles, one of the largest water management systems in the world. These ponds drove almost 200 water wheels, which supplied the mines with power. From Goslar on the northern edge of the Harz, we journeyed first eastwards to Bad Harzburg, then south to Osterode, and east to Nordhausen. Bad Harzburg lies at the foot of the Harz Mountains. It's an elegant spa town, one of the oldest in Germany, built on 7 natural springs. Overlooking the town is the Canossa column, erected in the late 19th century as a symbol of Bismarck's opposition to the Pope. The area had by now been absorbed by Prussia. Bismarck's famous words, "We will not go to Canossa," inscribed on the monument, refer to the humiliation of the 11th century Emperor Heinrich IV by Pope Gregory VII at Canossa, a slight still not forgiven 800 years later. The name Harzburg may strike a chord. In the turbulent 1930s, various right-wing groups met here at Bad Harzburg with the aim of forming an alliance, the Harzburg Front, to topple the German government. Those invited included two sons of the exiled Kaiser and a Nazi delegation led by Himmler, Röhm, and Goering, here seen in the front row. The alliance was short-lived, as the Nazis were confident that they could seize power on their own terms, which of course they did. During the Cold War, Bad Harzburg was a border town. Above the town stands a cross, honouring the many millions of Germans who were expelled from their ancestral homes in the East after the Second World War. This fine late 19th century building, Hotel Parkhaus, was owned by a Jewish family and became the centre of Jewish life for citizens and Jewish visitors to the spa. It even had its own synagogue. In 1933, the owners were forced to sell to non-Jews, and the synagogue was demolished. Happily, the building itself has survived, though no longer a hotel. Our last town in the former West Germany is Osterode, on the western edge of the Harz. The former granary, now the town hall, supplied grain for the mining villages of the Harz. For 150 years, until the early 19th century, the town was ruled by the House of Hanover, hence the British coat of arms. In the last days of the Second World War, Osterode put up a brief and futile resistance to the American troops, and the town suffered little damage. Many of its fine half-timbered buildings survived and is now one of over 100 towns on the Deutsche Fachwerkstraße, the half-timbered route, which passes through the Harz on its way from the mouth of the Elbe in the north to Lake Constance in the south. As we'll see, two other towns on our journey are on the half-timbered route, Halberstadt and Wernigerode. We now leave the former West Germany and remain in the Old East, the German Democratic Republic, GDR, for the rest of our journey. The border, the track on the left of this picture, is now barely discernible, but this was the impassable Iron Curtain for 40 years. Our next town, Nordhausen, another former imperial town, is the gateway to the southern Harz. Again, we see the imperial eagle in the coat of arms. In the Middle Ages, it was one of the most important towns in central Germany. Nordhausen suffered heavily in the war. The Germans were expected to make a stand in the Harz Mountains. Nordhausen was considered strategically important, and the town was targeted by the RAF. 3/4 of the town was destroyed, and few of the original buildings survived. Few German towns suffered such total destruction. Nordhausen did, however, hide a shameful secret. At the nearby Nazi concentration camp of Mittelbau-Dora, some 60,000 prisoners worked in inhumane conditions in a network of subterranean tunnels, which they themselves had dug, seeing daylight only once a week, in order to build the V2 rockets after the RAF had destroyed the original plant on the Baltic. A third of the prisoners, 20,000, died of exhaustion, starvation, or disease, or were killed by the guards. This simple memorial in front of the crematorium honours those murdered. After the war, Nordhausen lay in the Russian zone of occupation. The town hall, shown here in 1900, in 1945, and today was one of the few original buildings to be rebuilt. The red statue is of Roland, the legendary 8th century warrior who died a hero's death in battle. The statue was saved while all around it was destroyed. Roland symbolizes justice and freedom, and his statue stands in 27 town squares throughout Germany. We also find him most famously in Bremen. In recent years, some of Nordhausen's streets have been rebuilt in a style we're becoming familiar with. The rebuilding of the 13th century cathedral was completed only after German unification in 1990. The original church on this site became a place of pilgrimage in about the year 1000, when it received a splinter of the true cross from the Pope. The original was of the true cross in the center. The Holy Spirit of a different kind is Nordhausen's most famous export, the Schnapps Nordhäuser Doppelkorn. Skirting the Brocken before we ascend it, we visit Halberstadt, Quedlinburg, Thaler, and Wernigerode. The capital of the Harz region is Halberstadt. The bishopric was created by Charlemagne in the early 9th century. With its 1,600 half-timbered houses, it was known as the Rotenburg of the North. In 1945, it refused to surrender to the Americans and was heavily bombarded, 80% of the old town being reduced to rubble. 600 of its 1,600 half-timbered buildings were destroyed, and a further 600 deliberately neglected during GDR times and then demolished to be replaced by prefabricated concrete buildings. This picture was taken 40 years after the war. Only after unification in 1990 did restoration work begin on the remaining 400 half-timbered houses. The new German government made the restoration of Halberstadt a top priority. And the rebuilding has been so successful that the town has been added to the half-timbered route. The cathedral, built between the 13th and 15th centuries, was considered one of the most beautiful in Germany and the purest example of German Gothic architecture. In the wartime bombing, it suffered 12 direct hits. The rebuilding of churches had a low priority in the former East Germany, but this was considered an exceptional case. Even so, the reconstruction progressed slowly, handicapped by a lack of funds, craftsmen, and materials, and took several decades. This is the result. Much of the stained glass and other works of art had been removed before the bombing. The cathedral treasury, which had also been moved to safety, houses the most extensive medieval religious collection outside the Vatican. Several of the treasures were acquired from Constantinople by the Bishop of Halberstadt during the Crusades, including St. Nicholas's finger. The 12th century tapestry of Abraham and the sacrifice of Isaac is the oldest surviving example of European tapestry making. Halberstadt too has its Roland, the second old Germany after Bremen. A symbol of the town, it was protected during the war when the town hall behind it was destroyed and now guards the rebuilt town hall. Quedlinburg is one of the jewels of the Harz. Once again, the coat of arms points to its imperial heritage. With its narrow streets, half-timbered houses, and an abbey and castle on a hill, it's the epitome of medieval Germany and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It escaped the bombing of the Second World War and is considered one of the best preserved medieval towns in Europe. In the town square, we find on the right another Roland. We climbed up the steep path to the castle and the abbey. Henry the Fowler, the 10th century ruler who is considered the first king of Germany, was buried in the abbey. King Heinrich was adopted by the Nazis in the same way that Frederick the Great of Prussia was. Heinrich Himmler created a quasi-religion around King Heinrich and apparently considered himself the reincarnation of the king, who he called the Great Führer. Here Himmler leads a Nazi delegation through an SS guard into Quedlinburg Abbey in 1936 to lay a wreath on the king's grave in the crypt of the abbey on the 1000th anniversary of his death. The ceremony was a sham. Himmler knew that the king's tomb had been empty and the skeleton of an unknown female was interred in its place. After the war, Quedlinburg passed from the American to the Russian zone of occupation. Unusually, the medieval buildings were not demolished as elsewhere, but preserved, and after German unification, restored. Quedlinburg is now one of the largest and best maintained ensembles in the whole of Germany, with over 2,000 half-timbered houses. The River Border rises in the Harz and flows through a series of reservoirs before it reaches Quedlinburg. The total catchment area of the border and its several tributaries covers well over 1,000 square miles and provides hydroelectric power and drinking water for much of the Harz region. It's spanned by Germany's longest and scariest rope suspension bridge, most spectacular when you cross its 500 meters at night. And for some 6 miles, the border provides some of the most dramatic scenery in the whole of Germany. We are now in Thale. In the mid-19th century, the railway was extended from Berlin to Thale, and it became a popular destination for middle-class tourists from the industrial cities who desired to return to nature. The railway can transform Thale from a small town to a flourishing holiday resort. Walkers were attracted by the woodland walks where the poets Goethe and Heine both strolled. Hotel Zehnpfund, at the time Germany's largest summer hotel, was built to accommodate this new generation of wealthy tourists. And the characters in Fontana's novel Cécile came from Berlin to stay at this hotel. At the same time, artists of the Romantic movement were drawn to the area by the unspoiled beauty of the river valley. With its dramatic scenery, where the river has cut deeply into the hard granite rock, producing rugged cliffs 800 feet high. From Thale, you can climb up above the valley. Or, as we did, take the cable car high above the town to the Hexentanzplatz, and this is where we explore the legends of the witches of the Harz. The Hexentanzplatz, the witches' dance floor, high above the gorge, is where the witches danced on Walpurgisnacht, the witches' Sabbath, working themselves up into a frenzy before flying off to the Brocken on their broomsticks for an orgy with the devil. Here you see them queuing all the way up the Brocken, where the devil awaits them. This is the witches' altar on top of the Brocken, where the naked witches would offer themselves one by one to the devil, who would inject them with magic powers. For centuries, the Brocken, which is shrouded in mist for most of the year, has been associated with tales of witches and devils. But the story of the witches flying there on their broomsticks on Walpurgisnacht only became popular in the 17th century. The poet Goethe was a frequent visitor to the Harz Mountains in his day job as an inspector of mines. He first climbed the Brocken in 1777 and drew heavily on the legends of the Brocken in his drama Faust. At the Hexentanzplatz, naked witches are grotesquely represented, as is the devil. Today, the Witches' Sabbath is celebrated all over the Harz, with people dressing up as witches, but now fully clothed. Alternatively, you can recreate the rite of the witches on the scary slide from the top of the 210-foot high Harz Tower, with its view of the Brocken. And this was our ultimate destination, the summit of the Brocken, visited by 2 million a year. Broomsticks weren't an option. We could have walked, as many do, or cycled, as my group did in 1997. You can even ski to the top. But this time we opted for the famous steam train, the Brockenbahn, constructed in 1898. The Brocken lies just to the east of the former East-West German border, the Iron Curtain. Our journey wouldn't have been possible before German unification in 1990. During the Cold War, both the Russians and the East German Stasi maintained a large and powerful listening post on top of the Brocken, and the whole of the summit was protected by a 12-foot high, mile-and-a-half-long wall. The mountain was completely closed to the public, including by rail. A month after the borders fell in 1989, hundreds of East Germans climbed the Brocken and forced their way into the compound. The summit was accessible for the first time in 28 years. There was much celebration when the train journeys resumed. Our own journey to the summit would begin in Wernigerode, one of the most attractive and best preserved towns in the Harz. This is the main square and the distinctive town hall. Wernigerode is situated on the half-timbered route. In the last days of the war, the town surrendered to the Americans and widespread destruction was avoided. After the Potsdam Conference, the area was occupied by the Russians, and the town, with its castle and unspoiled medieval center, became a showpiece for the East German regime, who accommodated their foreign guests here. The implication was that everywhere in the GDR looked like this, and not like this. The castle overlooks the town. It was originally built to secure the journey of the emperors when they went hunting in the Harz. It was rebuilt in the neo-Romantic style in the 19th century by the princes of Stolberg-Wernigerode. After the war, as elsewhere in East Germany, the prince and his family were dispossessed, and the castle is now the town museum, displaying the lifestyle of the princely family. From the castle, you can see the top of the Brocken, 8 miles away as the crow flies, but 21 miles by train. Our journey to the top of the Brocken, long in the planning, was about to begin. This was our locomotive. It takes the train an hour and a half to climb the 21 miles. We stopped in Scherken, where refreshments are available, bratwurst, and the local speciality. A reddish-brown herbal liqueur called Scherker Feuerstein, named after a local red granite rock formation. When the railway was extended from Scherker to the top of the Brocken at the end of the 19th century, the little village of Scherker became a popular tourist resort, known as the St. Moritz of the north, where the rich built luxury villas and grand hotels accommodated European royalty. One such hotel, the Prince Stolberg, was built for nobility and wealthy tourists, and after the war, now renamed after the poet Heine, it was closed to the general public and used by high-ranking officials and guests of the East German regime. After German unification, it became superfluous. It was demolished and replaced by a holiday village. Times change. Since the borders came down, Scherker has benefited from its position on the railway to the Brocken and its proximity to one of the region's most popular skiing centres, just over the former border, which you see here. The tower stands on top of the Wurmberg, the second highest mountain in the Harz. A popular holiday destination in summer and in the winter. The Harz is the biggest winter sports destination in northern Germany. The old East-West German border runs nearby. Some of the watchtowers have been preserved and incorporated into open-air museums. You can walk along the former Iron Curtain to the top of the Brocken. And whenever a road crosses the old border, a sign tells you the day, the hour, and the minute when it was opened, in this case, 11:30 a.m. on December the 12th, 1990. From Scherker, the train continues first through pleasant woodland, though rather sadly, higher up, 2/3 of the pines have been killed by bark beetles. The road and the railway pass through a moor, which Goethe crossed in 1777 on his way to the summit. It's now named after him. We finally reached the top of the Brocken. Not much of our journey, it must be admitted, was undertaken on foot. The summit is dominated by the station, the cafes, the hotel, and the television transmitter. The railway station was opened in 1899. In 1936, the world's first television tower was erected here and carried pictures of the Berlin Olympics. Later, when the summit was sealed off during the Cold War, this was the Russian listening station. A memorial on top of the Brocken commemorates Goethe's walk in 1777. Also commemorated is the poet Heinrich Heine, who climbed the Brocken in 1824 and stayed at the hotel, which had opened shortly before, as the Romantic movement attracted people back to nature. Heine is supposed to have written this in the guest book. Viele Steine, müde Beine, aus sich keine, Heinrich Heine. Lots of stones, tired legs, no view, Heinrich Heine. Unfortunately, it doesn't rhyme in English and probably isn't by him anyway. More seriously, Heine recorded his 1824 walk through the Harz in one of his most famous works, Die Harzreise. And on a day when there was a view, he described the Brocken thus: Der Brocken ist ein Deutscher. The Brocken is a German. The mountain is a German because only a German could have produced a gigantic panorama of such detail with all the mountains, woods, rivers, and hundreds of towns and villages, but perhaps with too much detail to be considered beautiful. A typical Heine remark. However, the detail is of interest to us because from the top of the Brocken, we can see our next and last destination, Wernigerode and its castle. Mission accomplished. It was back to Wernigerode. Our hotel in Wernigerode was just one of many beautifully restored buildings previously owned by the East German state. It was taken into private ownership shortly after unification. All the private houses are obviously cherished. We left Wernigerode with memories of a thriving town, busy but still relaxed. Heinrich Heine describes in his Harzreise its narrow streets and its Gemütlichkeit, a word that means you feel comfortable and at home. Though typically, Heine can't resist a bit of a dig and adds the adjective bürgerlich, bourgeois, so bourgeois coziness. I think I'll settle for that.
Could you just go back to that photograph?
Yep.
It was just about there that I acquired this bottle of whiskey. If you could just move that water bottle slightly towards yourself. Yes.
That's when I last met Immo, he mentioned that he'd been to Wernigerode and come back with Harz whiskey, which has appeared here just in front of me. So anyway, this was the Heine dig, bourgeois coziness. Definitely a place to return to, which can be said of the whole area of the Harz. I leave you with a few final images of the bewitching Harz.
Thank you very much, Frank, for that excellent talk. Even richer and more memorable than when I was present for the first occasion it was delivered earlier this year. Tremendous, wonderful research and beautiful pictures. A very engaging talk. So thank you very much. I was wondering, actually, is it possible to get from between those towns by public transport? How you weren't on a bicycle this time?
Not this time, no. No, that's deliberately with my little group over here. We thought about a car, but then we thought if we flew to Hanover and flew back from Magdeburg, in between we could take local trains, and it worked very well. I think I'm right in saying, Lawrence, not a single train was late.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
Well, that's good to know. Now, do we have any questions from the floor for Frank? And are there any in the chat, Immo, online? Anyone?
We have 19 people left on the online. I've encouraged them. Class Bonkin wants to ask a question.
Interessant wäre, dass zwischen Bad Harzburg und Braunschweig die erste Eisenbahn in Deutschland gebaut wurde.
I'm a great railway fan. I'm being told that the first German railway was constructed between where, Braunlage and Bad Harzburg. I thought it was between Nuremberg and Fürth in about 1830.
And Thorn and Taxis say they built the first one, but there are arguments about that. But Braunschweig was influential before it was taken over or amalgamated with Hanover in the 1950s, because after 45, Brunswick was still a free state, and a big part of the Harz was under the influence or even controlled by Brunswick. And Brunswick has the oldest technical university in Germany, where I was lucky to go to. And I don't want to talk about Brunswick. You talk about the Harz Mountains, was wonderful. I was evacuated there during the Second World War. I'm not the youngest. And it is fascinating and unfortunate that in many parts of the world people don't know about it. And the other thing is, you find from Bad Harzburg you get bottled water, luckily in glass, so it is not plastic to damage your brain. And that is sold all over Germany. If it's good or not, I don't believe in those waters very much, but nevertheless, that is from Harzburg. What else? I don't remember anything else, but you did very well. I'm pleased. Also, your photographs are outstanding at times, I must say that. A little warning, if anybody wants to go to the Hexentanzplatz, where my people wanted to take me last May, there was a queue of about 3 kilometers, and we were told, don't wait because it will be closed before you can even see it. So be careful. Even if you buy tickets, you cannot, if you are unlucky, in good weather, because the Harz Mountains suffer from bad weather, from fog and high clouds and things like that. So do many mountains all over the world. It's nothing new. But I enjoyed my few years there, and I found it really impressive for the north of Germany to have those mountains.
Yeah, okay. A warning, if you didn't catch it, the Witches' Dance Floor has become terribly touristy. It's a little bit like Land's End, and we're told that you now have to queue on
Oh, it's terrible. Don't go, because there is really nothing to see, as far as I'm concerned. There are much better places in the Harz Mountains than going to Hexentanzplatz.
Thank you also for the vote of confidence for Braunschweig. I noticed you didn't mention the football team.
Would that be difficult, or would people not agree? They go from the first Liga to the second, and then if they are lucky, they get back to the first. But nevertheless, they travel all over Germany.
They're quite low down the second division. Anyway, thank you for your comments. Anyway,
thank you.
And there's another message here asking, how long did the whole trip take?
interestingly, we did it in 4 nights, 5 days. About a fortnight later, one of our group was so taken by the trip that he went back with his partner for a 2-week journey. So you can spend 5 days, you can spend 14 days. I've said to people before, I'm a Midlander, and I think everybody ought to know the Cotswolds in England, and they don't. And in Germany, everybody ought to know the Harz, and they don't. But it does market its tourism quite vigorously. There are lots of hotels, There's lots to see. 5 days, 6 days, and use public transport.
Yeah.
But it's almost unknown to the British, probably.
Yes.
It's very unknown to the British.
Yes, yeah, that's so. Yeah, yes. One or two people in this room I know have been to the Harz, but not many British have been.
Thomas, did you have a question?
Yes, so given that the region straddles the old east-west divide, what does it look like politically now? So is this somewhere where there's, I mean, I should know this, but I don't in terms of that region, but how did that sort of translate in terms of?
It's partly the eastern states have gone very right wing, and this was evident in the local elections. And the border of the Harz goes straight between East and West Germany.
Yeah.
And I think I'm right in saying that in Saxony-Anhalt there is quite a strong right wing faction.
Yes,
Would you like somebody to say?
at the same time, Hitler could not go for elections into the Reichstag. The Nazis could only go into the Landtage. So he needed German nationality as he was Austrian. And who gave him the German nationality? The Gauleiter of Brunswick, Klages. Because they were Nazi, and I'm not sure that they will not be right-wing as well. There are right-wing, you're absolutely right, and there is a reason for that, I think, that in previous East Germany, people gone right-wing. And I realize is that until the countries were united, they had never known a democracy since 1930s.
We've got two more questions online. I think it's
Then we should close. Yeah.
Peter. Please speak.
Peter?
Frank, hi, it's Peter. How nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, Peter. I could have included a picture of Han and Clay.
I thought you would. But there's so much you could cover, and you have to draw a line somewhere. So I just wanted, firstly, to thank you. Despite having had a home in the Harz since 2007, and going there 3 or 4 times a year, I still learn so much tonight. So thank you very much for that. I really enjoyed it and appreciated that. To others listening, I mean, I make it part of my mission to try to persuade British friends and German friends, actually, to visit the Harz, because so many don't. And I think it's such a shame, because it's an absolutely fascinating area. I did endorse all what you say about the ease of getting around. I mean, I sometimes hire a car when I'm there, sometimes I don't. Public transport works really well.
Yeah.
The railway line which you showcased, of course, I mean, not only does it run from Bielefeld up to the Brocken, it also runs across the Nordhausen, and you can then actually use it to get to Quedlinburg as well. Need to think through the timetables a little bit, because it doesn't run that, I mean, it takes a while, but it's a brilliant way to travel through the Harz, just absolutely magical. And I'd say, in response to the previous comment, I've been going there, as I say, 3-4 times a year since 2007. I'm still finding things I hadn't seen before. The area still delights and enchants me.
I better summarise that, Peter, to the people in the hall. This is a friend who's got a home in a little village called Hanenklee in the middle of the Harz, and he's saying what a great area it is, and even though he goes there regularly, he hasn't seen all of it, and he's emphasising that you can do it very easily by public transport, which is what we did.
Absolutely. But Frank, in conclusion, thank you so much for, as ever, fascinating and interesting, and for capturing a bit of the magic of the Harz, which I think you did really well. So thank you for that.
Final question from Richard then.
Thank you very much. Yes, well, what a wonderful talk. And I just wanted to pick up on this issue of the first German railways. And I'm amazed to see that on Wikipedia, it quotes 1831 as the first German railway. It was a between Essen-Kupferdreh and Nierenhof, which is near Langenberg. And it was horse-drawn and narrow gauge. In 1847, it was converted to steam power and standard gauge. And it was on the Wuppertal Vohwinkel Essen-Über railway. But I better not, as I'm a rail enthusiast, I better not waste too much time on that, because I think the railway is one of the great assets of the area. Is it not, Frank?
It is, and yes, with people in the hall didn't hear this. We've now got a third contender for the oldest German railway. I must say, I thought it was Nuremberg Fürth.
Yeah.
Steam hauled, of course. But I agree. It's a great way to travel, and there are lots of steam trains, particularly in the Old East, up on the Baltic, for example.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we should conclude there now. It's just gone 8 o'clock. Thanks very much, Frank. Of course, none of those railways predate the British railways, because this year is the 200th anniversary of the Stockton-Darlington 1825, the first railway in the world. But of course, German technology is superior in many ways anyway, even if their trains don't run on time anymore. Anyway, thank you all very much for coming this evening. There are refreshments for those present in the hall in the vestry at the back. These talks happen monthly. I'm giving the next talk in April. It will be on William Shakespeare's clown, who danced the 9 Days' Wonder through this from London to Norwich, and came through Whitechapel on the way, which makes it relevant to this church. It'll be an illustrated talk. I reenacted this dance in 2016 in commemoration of William Shakespeare's 400th anniversary. But that's in a month, and then there are subsequent talks after that through the rest of the year. But it only remains for me now to thank Frank extremely, very much for this wonderful talk again this evening. And please join me now in giving him a round of applause.